It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the Georgetown's head rowing coach, Coach Kendall Mulligan. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks so much for having me, Brandon. Just super excited to be here.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you want to get started in coaching in college rowing?
Yes, interestingly enough, I actually was a walk-on to rowing in college. So I have a little bit of a unique juxtaposition being a coach that both was a walk-on, but also had originally been recruited for soccer and lacrosse. So I've gone through both processes. And when I got to college, I ended up switching over to rowing, met a rowing recruit. She sucked me right in. Turned out it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Who knew at 18 years old? And when I was graduating, I had a degree in art history with a minor in French and wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to go with that. And it felt very natural to go into coaching. My mom was a longtime athletic director and had coached many of my teams growing up. My family in general, both my parents, my grandparents, my cousins, everybody was involved in sports. It's something that's been a huge part of my life. So it was very easy to say, hey, I'm going to go into coaching, see how this goes to start while I figure out, what I want to do outside. After my first year of coaching, it was pretty clear that it's something that I truly loved and was very passionate about. And so I ended up sticking and have been very fortunate to continue to move up through different positions and challenge myself in new ways.
What was that experience like going to Washington College and competing in rowing and other sports?
Would you mind repeating that? I think it froze a little bit.
What was that experience like going to Washington College and getting to compete in rowing?
It was fantastic. I was so fortunate to have a really great mentor as my coach, Mike Davenport, and learned so much from him, not just about the sport, but also about being a good person and team cultures and how to develop that. And so was really fortunate too. Like I said, was originally recruited for a different sport, ended up coming into rowing. And the boathouse was only a mile from campus, which, as most people know, is pretty special. Like it's not that frequent that you're able to run, bike, walk to your boathouse to and from without losing much time during your day. So it really ended up in a place that was absolutely beautiful on the Eastern Shore, on the Chester River, that was right there, right? Rowing is really a priority sport at Washington College, which I didn't know at the time, but very fortunate that that program has been extremely successful there. They now have a new boathouse that was built a couple of years ago, and it continues to be a huge part of the history and future, I think, of athletics there. And just such a beautiful place where I really found a sense of belonging as well.
Being recruited in another sport, what was that experience like playing that other sport and also competing in rowing?
So I didn't end up actually participating in that sport in college at all. I switched in the fall. So originally I came in thinking about doing lacrosse and had started fall ball. The coach changed, ended up not being a good fit with the new coach. I met a rowing recruit, and she sucked me in pretty quickly to the sport. The coaches saw that I was tall. I looked athletic, so everybody was excited, right? But I'd been a tri-varsity athlete in high school doing soccer, basketball, and lacrosse prior to coming to college. So I was familiar with being a high level athlete, and rowing was just really a new venture for me to really adapt those skills that I'd been honing for so many years in so many different sports. And rowing's definitely a unique sport from the ball sports that I played, right? Soccer, basketball, lacrosse, all ball sports with teammates on a court or a field. And rowing, it's depending on the boat class, could be 9 of you out there with your coxswain included, doing the same thing at the same time. It's much more of an endurance sport rather than a ball sport. So definitely a transition there, but was very fortunate to have a lot of the skills of being a teammate and having been an athlete and a good foundation that way to find success in rowing.
After college, what was it like getting into coaching and becoming assistant coach for rowing at Franklin and Madison?
Yes, it was very interesting, my sort of trajectory. So I originally, when I left college, I went into coaching at the Petty School in Hightstown, New Jersey. Again, was very fortunate to have great mentors there in both the girls and boys coaches. Barb Groot on the girls side and then Joe Murta on the boys side that really helped foster a love for the sport and a lot greater knowledge for me very quickly after college. And then was looking for a new challenge, applied for that job at Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, PA, when I was fortunate to get that job. About 2 weeks after being hired, the head coach actually left. And so I was elevated to the interim head coach at the time. Again, really fortunate to have some great individuals like the athletic director, Patty Epps, who really supported me and to believe in me at, 24 years old was pretty, now that I'm a little bit older and still in college athletics, that was pretty gutsy of her. And I'm just so grateful that she provided so much support and learning and space and backed me up with the parents too. As you can imagine, for parents having their 18 to 22-year-old uh, children have a 24-year-old coach, this is her first head coaching position. That's a pretty stark contrast. You're pretty close together in age. And was very fortunate that things went well. And at the end of that first year, the 2014-2015 season, I was elevated to full-time head coach.
How was that transition like for you, as you said, being so close in age and being 24 at that time as head coach?
I think one of the elements, again, I mentioned obviously Patty Epps as the athletic director being extremely supportive, but I also had a really great set of captains that year too that I sort of fell into with the program, and that they were able to find a way to believe, and if they wanted a season, this is what was going to happen, and they backed me up in so many ways and led their team beautifully, because I coached both the men and the women there. And so I think that made a really big difference in that transition. Additionally, I have great support from my family. So both my parents, my sister, my mom having been athletic director, I could call her and ask her lots of questions that were, very applicable to the types of jobs that she does all the time and questions that she faces with at work all the time, every single day. So I had a professional resource right at my fingertips 24/7, even outside of that Franklin and Marshall bubble itself. So it was a difficult transition, I think, but more of that was, people not being sure if a 24-year-old would be a good fit or be able to do it. And because I had some really great supporters in my corner, I think that allowed me to be successful and gave me the space to try things. And being 24, you're also really excited, right? I was super excited to go into my first coaching job in college. It's what I wanted to do at that point. I knew it. And to be able to do it in a place that's, as beautiful as Lancaster, PA, I was so fortunate.
What was that experience like getting to coach both the men's side and the women's side of rowing?
That's a great question. I think, now I'm coaching women exclusively, but I absolutely loved coaching both men and women. While the teams were a little bit different in their cultures, they did a lot together at Franklin and Marshall, the way that the program was structured. So we did spend a lot of time together. As the team got bigger, we had to separate the practices. So we'd have a separate men's practice, particularly when we were inside sharing the ergs, and a separate women's practice on the ergs. On the water, we actually structured the program that I had both the 1Vs, so the men's 1V and the women's 1V, and then my assistant would have the men's 2V and the women's 2V. So they actually trained alongside each other and really pushed each other. I was really special to see, I think, particularly for me, being a woman, to see my male athletes and how in touch they were in terms of the emotional side of the sport too. I think so often men can be misjudged in the sense that, they're not as emotional as women, or they're not as connected with that piece. And the men that I had the opportunity to work with at Franklin and Marshall were truly they felt like that was just an important piece as all the physical work that they were doing. And so their culture was so strong. It was really special for me to see as a female coach to be a part of that. I hadn't had that opportunity, obviously, in my own personal experience. And the women were just as hardworking, a great, exciting group. And to have them both come together, I think it was really a wonderful opportunity.
For you, what was that transition like going from coaching both the men's and the women's side to then coming to Georgetown and just focusing on the women's side?
I don't think it was a huge transition. I don't think it was very difficult. Obviously, being a woman myself, like I shared a lot of those experiences that they have being female student athletes. And so I can really relate to them, particularly that time too, especially when I was looking at the job at 28 to come to Georgetown. Still not that far off from where they were. I really remembered what it was like. But I think the biggest difference at Georgetown is obviously you're coming into a Division I institution where the volume of training and the time that you're putting into your sport is much greater in terms of days, hours, weeks that you're training than it was at the Division III level. So to me, less so than going from coaching men and women to just coaching women, it was more so the amount of time that we were training that was really the biggest difference.
What was that feeling like for you becoming the next head coach at Georgetown?
It was a really special feeling. I think, it was always my long-term goal to be a Division I head coach, and for that to come to fruition at 28, I also think I was a little bit shocked, just to be honest with you. I'm so grateful to my sport administrator who's still here, Pat McCardle, our athletic director, Lee Reed, who's still here, and their support and belief in me as a coach too. And again, very grateful to Patty Epps and our president, that was at Franklin and Marshall at the time too. They gave some great recommendations and really were in my corner again, supporting me. So as you're seeing, I had a little bit of a trend in my career of having great supporters and people willing to be mentors and advocate for me. And, so coming into Georgetown, it felt like a dream come true to have this role. I definitely felt a little bit of imposter syndrome to start. How did I, go from being a Division III head coach to being a Division I head coach? Is that too big of a jump? Is it the right jump? Turned out it was definitely the right jump, and really wonderful to be able to train at a little bit higher level than what I was seeing at Franklin and Marshall.
When coming to Georgetown, what was it like getting first started in building the culture?
So I was really fortunate that I came into a team that had a very good social culture with each other. So they were really supportive of each other. They cared about their well-being as humans. I had wonderful captains. Again, you're going to see a trend that, for me, I feel like the most successful teams have fantastic captains that both work with you as a coach, but also work with the team really, really well. And so I was really fortunate to have a great set of captains that year. Was also fortunate that our lightweight coach was returning, so he was able to continue to work with our lightweight program, and I could really focus on the open weight program because at Georgetown, we're sort of seen as two houses under one roof. We're all women's rowing, but you've got lightweight and open weight with different championships and things like that. I think the biggest culture change that happened over time was really integrating both that support and social culture and adding in that highly competitive piece of how do you find that balance that you are moving forward together rather than competing against each other while you're at practice, and knowing that that's a comfortable thing to do, that it's good to challenge each other and to hold each other accountable. I think that was the biggest change that we saw over the next few years.
As a head coach, what has that been like building the coaching staff around you and the players around you?
I think it's been really special. For me, I love being a builder. So even when I was at F&M, the program was really growing to chase things that had never been done before. It's the same thing at Georgetown. There were a lot of things, which is very rare at a place like Georgetown, that you can say, oh, this is something that I can be the first one to ever do this. And when I say I really mean the team, the program, not actually me as a coach. So for them, for the student athletes to say, hey, to medal in this event, you could be the first ones to ever do this. This is a rare opportunity at Georgetown that's really exciting. Like, let's go for it. I think that was a really special piece of it that interested me in particular of coming here, was that there was opportunity for that. There was a lot of sense of space for being creative and being supportive in that process of making the team better. And the athletes were hungry to be better. They were excited to be better. They were eager. They're extremely intelligent, empowered women that I'm so grateful to work with day in and day out.
What does a typical game day look like for you as the head rowing coach versus for your athletes?
That's an interesting question. And coaches versus athletes. I think in rowing, if you've talked to other rowing coaches, obviously, we oftentimes drive the trailer. At some Division I institutions, they might have a boatman or a rigger person that drives the boats to events. But here at Georgetown, we as coaches drive our own boats. So it could involve, if it's a day trip, we might leave campus as coaches with the trailer at 4 a.m., get to our regatta site, 7:30 in the morning, drop the boats off there in the trailer, and then we wait for the bus to arrive depending on when the first race of the day is. So the student athletes come a little bit later when I go to pick up the trailer in the morning from campus. I also bring breakfast for them and leave it out for them before the bus rolls up. So they've got, good food to eat, to be fueled when they get there as well. And they've got some great requests now from Costco for their breakfasts, which always crack me up. And so that's sort of what their day starts as, hop on the bus a little bit later. Hopefully they can relax, get a little bit more sleep on the bus. And then when they get to the regatta site, that's really where our days come together. And we start, rigging the boats, setting up everything for competition. With rowing, it's such an equipment intensive sport that we've got to make sure, every tiny piece is put together to make sure that we can actually compete without an issue. And I think that's a huge piece of setup that both athletes and coaches are working on. Then when it's time to launch for their races, we'll do pre-race talks. We really do rely on our captains and our coxswains to organize the warm up, making sure that they're timing. So we as coaches have gone through, this is the expectation for what you're going to do for warm up. And they lay out all the timing for the athletes to make sure when it's time to come together to talk, to launch, we're ready to go. In the meantime, we as coaches are, double checking, making sure that things are tight, that they're in the right place, that they're working accurately. Then we'll walk them down to the water. We, get them out there with the oars, give them a fist bump, and off they go. So for rowing, it's interesting in that, your job is really done before they get to the water. Once you let them on the water, it's sort of like putting your kids on the bus and you hope, they'll put everything in place that they've learned and do a really great job, but you can't coach them on the water for regattas. So that's all got to happen beforehand. They've got to be prepared and ready to go.
With rowing being an all-day sport, what is it like keeping the momentum of your athletes in the middle of the day versus throughout the rest of the day?
I think it's interesting. I haven't thought about it, being an all-day sport and how to keep that momentum. Oftentimes we'll have heats in the morning and finals in the afternoon. So you've got, you get there, like I just said, rig the boats, you prepare, you go out. Heats, are a little bit less competitive than the finals, but you've got a goal, obviously, to make the A final, if there's multiple level finals in the event. And so we want to be ready to do that. What do we need to do? Is there any strategy that we need to have? What rate are we coming down the course? What's our expectation? All of that needs to be mapped out. Then ideally, we finish up being ready to go after that first race, the heat, to go into the A final. They come off the water, we debrief, what are things that went well? What are things we want to improve on that we can put in directly to our race this afternoon? The biggest thing after that, honestly, is fueling them. So making sure that they eat right, that they get some Gatorade, get some carbohydrates in their system. They eat the right type of things too, right? If you've got another race, you don't want to eat something that's too heavy that's sitting in your stomach later that day. So we actually have a little bit of downtime where, you race, you're excited, then you've got to bring your energy down, and then you've got to refocus and bring it back up. So I think that emotional regulation is really important, because if you try to stay, at peak level the whole day, that's really challenging for your system to do, to be able to perform. So we want them to stay off their feet, stay off their legs, stay relaxed in between, and then sort of flip that switch again when it's time to go back out for the final. So it's really a balance of things rather than staying 110% on 24/7 in that moment. I think they're on in the sense that there are things that they should be doing to take care of themselves and physically prepare and mentally prepare in between. But then that peak sort of adrenaline moment has got to come back up for the final.
Who are some of the teams in your conference that you compete against?
So our conference is the Patriot League, and typically, I'd say some of our biggest competitors are Boston University, Navy, Bucknell. We've got Loyola, Lehigh, Holy Cross. They're all in there as well. So there's 9 schools in total. MIT's in there as well. And just really fortunate to have a great league. We're affiliate members, actually, because as many people know, Georgetown is part of the Big East as a whole, but the Big East doesn't sponsor rowing as a conference. So we've been very fortunate to find a home with the Patriot League with like-minded institutions that have a strong academic focus, and regionally, a lot of them are either, Massachusetts or down in this Mid-Atlantic region. So we're very fortunate that way too.
What is that like getting to compete against some of those schools like Boston U versus competing against Navy?
It's wonderful. I think it's such, in particular, competing against Navy, it's such a special opportunity. They're regional, right? They're in Annapolis, not too far from us, feels like a next door rival. They have a wonderful coaching staff that's, filled with wonderful people. There's a very particular type of student athlete that wants to go to the Naval Academy. We do actually do quite a bit of cross recruiting, believe it or not, between Georgetown and the Naval Academy. There's a couple every year that are interested in both and figuring out, what do they want to do? Where do they want to end up? But the women on that team are also just phenomenal people, right? They're, making this choice to go to the Naval Academy, which is such a beautiful thing. And I'm so appreciative of everything that they do. And the fact that we get to compete against them, I think, is so special. And a couple of years ago, we did actually a race on the base in Annapolis, and we're going to do one again this spring. And I think for our team to go and see, what's it like for them every day, just even the tiniest picture of being on the base and things like that, I think is pretty unique as well. And then Boston University, obviously being up a little bit north, they've been very competitive recently in terms of winning the Patriot League, going to NCAA. They've got scholarships. We don't have scholarships. I think that's an interesting juxtaposition that certainly challenges us, and they're a great school to be chasing and competing with for us.
What does a typical recruit visit look like, and what do you look at in those prospective student athletes when out recruiting?
So if we do an official visit, we really want to give our recruits a day in the life. So we want them to come to practice, get breakfast, go to class, have lunch, come back to the strength center, right, to lift with the team in the afternoon, see what that second practice is like, meet with us as coaches, tour the athletic facilities. I think there's really just that opportunity to say, be in the shoes of, if I were a Georgetown student athlete on the women's rowing team, what would it look like? And that's the experience that they really get. And honestly, for us, in the recruiting process, so often recruits talk with us as coaches to start with and might talk with 1 or 2 student athletes, but it's really the team, right? That's such an important part of their decision. And so for us as coaches, I think it's so valuable when our recruits get to really interact with the team or stay with the team in the dorm or again really see that day in the life. I think that's where they really can see what they could expect, or can they see themselves here in this program? Do they see themselves thriving? Do they connect with the team culture? All of that is so important for us as coaches at Georgetown. There's a couple things that we look at in particular in our recruits. First is, are you a good person? And that sounds like such a simple question and such a simple phrase, but we're really looking for people that are going to do the right thing in tough situations, even when no one is watching. I think that's a really big piece. We're also looking at obviously the academic component. Being Georgetown, there's an academic standard. Can't just recruit anybody that we want to. They've got to still hit an academic threshold in order to come here and row here. And then we look at the rowing piece, of course. Where are you now versus where are you going? I think for our program, potential is a huge piece. So getting recommendations from your current coaches, whether that be a scholastic coach or a summer club coach. The rowing world is pretty small, so we've got a lot of similar connections, and very fortunate to have a lot of friends and other coaches that I know well at the high school level that are willing to advocate for student athletes or say, hey, this student's going to be a really great fit for your program. Would love to connect you with them. I love that part of it too. So those are really the main things we look at. For me, I'm definitely a culture coach. I want the student athlete that's going to add to our culture, whether they're in the top boat or the bottom boat. How do they see themselves fitting into that puzzle? Do they see themselves being able to sit down and contribute in whatever seat they're in and be happy but not satisfied, right? Like we always want to be chasing more. We always want to be pushing more. The student athletes that are competitive and thrive in that competitive environment. I love when a student athlete just loves competing. So whether we're on the water or on the erg competing, or if we're doing some sort of team building game activity, like are you competing in a really fun, productive way? Are you making your teammates better? Those are all questions and things that I look for.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing those freshmen put on that Georgetown uniform for the first time versus the seniors putting it on for the last time?
For the freshmen, I think it's such a special opportunity. They spend so much time thinking about, where do I want to go to school? What's a good fit? For many of them, they're recruited by many other institutions, and they come in, they don't get their unis right away. They've got to wait for it. And so when they finally get their uni on, it's sort of like, oh my gosh, I've made it. Like it's such a special opportunity to see that brightness in their eyes too, of being able to compete for their college or university for the first time. And the upperclassmen also do a really wonderful job of making it special for them too. I think just as much as it's fun for us as coaches to see the freshmen in their Georgetown gear for the first time, it's fun for our returners to see them. And it's sort of like really being included and feeling that sense of belonging into the team again, another step towards that. For the seniors, I think it's such a beautiful thing, when they get to wear their uni for the last time. It's also really challenging, right? You create these wonderful relationships with them. Many of them you've known for 5 years at this point because you start before they get to Georgetown, building that relationship, getting to know their families. And so it can be sort of bittersweet, right? That you're excited they're starting the rest of their life and you hope that they've learned valuable lessons through the team and their time at Georgetown that they can use in every aspect of their life, not just athletically. But you're also going to miss, whatever it is that they brought to the team that made them a unique individual that you wanted to bring to the team. So that could be, their zest for life. It could be their competitive edge. It could be the growth trajectory that you've seen them go from being in the bottom boat to being in the top boat. I think there's so many different things and everybody's journey is unique. And I'm so grateful, that our seniors, recently have done such a wonderful job of maintaining, creating, building, cultivating a culture that's going to last well past their time here and really leaving a legacy.
What's that like as a head coach getting to see them going on to the national level and representing Team USA or Canada?
Yeah, so I think it's really special when you get to do that. I had an opportunity actually to coach with the junior national team for a while, and so for me, it's been interesting to watch some athletes go from, that junior national team level through collegiate careers into the national team as well. And for us at Georgetown, not having scholarships, really finding those athletes that can challenge themselves to get to the national level, I think is pretty special. And we had a student athlete, she's a senior currently, that went to the under 23 development camp not too long ago, had a great experience, did a wonderful job. And it's fun to see, that work and that work ethic come to fruition for those that are so passionate.
What are some of your future plans for the program moving forward?
So a couple of future plans, I think one big plan certainly would be to be medaling in all 4 events at the Patriot League. This year, for the first time ever, we've actually added the second 4. So we've added another boat to the Patriot League as a conference. It's been a long time coming that the coaches of the conference have worked hard for. So I'm really excited to see that additional boat class added in to take more student athletes, give them a really high level. And the expectation this year is we want to be medaling in all 4 events. So I think that's probably the biggest current goal that we've got for the team.
What advice would you give those incoming freshmen entering their first year of college rowing?
A reminder for them,
Mhm.
I would say be patient is a big one. I think it's so often, particularly in a place like Georgetown, that you recruit really high level both students and athletes, and they're coming in, where they were sort of the big fish in their pond, and they're coming in, and there's a lot of big fish here that are really excited, really hardworking, really talented, great skills to be, the best in their club all coming together. And I think that that can be an interesting experience for our freshmen that can help them really grow in so many ways. And so being patient, enjoying every moment you get of your freshman year, particularly in the fall as you learn, and just trying to learn as much as you can, listen, absorb, be adaptable. In rowing, you might come into a program with a totally different style of your stroke, and so you might need to learn that program style, which could be a different rhythm, it can be a different patterning, that sort of thing. So it's just really important that they remain patient, and really look at that long-term process and take it day by day. I think being a freshman in college is a little bit like drinking out of a fire hose. You're a little bit thirsty, you're excited, you want to be hydrated, but it's like way too much water coming at once to actually get an effective drink, right? So the same thing of coming to college, like you're excited to be here, you're excited to be on the team, but there's so much information. You're eating in a new place, you're sleeping in a new place, that you've got to, take a breath and be patient and sort of give it a little bit of time and get your footing under you.
What advice would you give those college juniors transitioning into being seniors and leading the program?
A lot of our advice comes down to, what type of program do you want to be a part of? What type of legacy do you want to leave? And I think so many of them, right, if we're recruiting right, they really just need to authentically continue to be themselves. Don't be something that they're not. I think that's a big piece of it. And relying on other people, relying on each other. It's not, one woman on an island trying to figure it out. You've got your teammates for a reason. We always talk about here at Georgetown that we really want them to think about there's a one letter difference. You've got to do this or you get to do this. And we really want to remind ourselves, that we get to do this. We're so fortunate that we get to go out and row in boats, right? And we're so fortunate that we've got a team of like-minded women that want to challenge themselves, that do support each other. And so for those student athletes that are coming into that sort of leadership role based on where they are in their years on the team, remembering, that it's a gift that doesn't last forever, that we get to do this together. And I think that's a really big part of it.
What advice would you give those athletes that have aspirations of making it to the national team?
I think being patient again. I do think being patient. I think being very accountable to what you want, your goals, asking a lot of questions, using the resources around you. So just because I'm listed as your head coach or we've got our assistant coach here, right? You've got a lot of other resources being at Georgetown. So whether that's our sports psychologist, our dietitian, our athletic training staff, our strength and conditioning staff, there's so many experts at your fingertips. Take advantage of using all of those experts to create the most holistic, well-rounded, and successful program that's going to help catapult yourself into that national team level. And I think too, asking, for others that have expertise on that experience. Again, a lot of it is asking questions. A lot of it is follow through with what you want to do and consistency. I think those small actions done every single day are going to help you a lot more than just trying to make one big jump all of a sudden. So being consistent is another important piece.
What advice would you give those future head coaches looking to build their own program?
One advice would be to listen when you come into a new program. I think listen to what the student athletes have to say, listen to what the relationship currently is between the administration, your sport administrator, other staff members with the team. I think that's a big piece. Try to learn from what has been to get to where you want to go. I think it can be really easy for coaches to come in and just sort of try to flip-flop it night and day. And I think that can be really jarring for a program. I think it depends on where you are, but I think too, oftentimes there's something good about a program you're coming into, and you might have a million wonderful ideas that are going to work and you want to try them all. And I think trying to put them in one at a time, having listened to where the team is coming from, where the program's coming from, is going to help you be successful. It's also going to help you with your buy-in from the current athletes. I think to be successful, you've got to find a way to get the team on the same bus together, right? In the boat, moving the same direction together. You've got to find a way to get people to believe in the goals and the mission for the program and themselves for it to be successful.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you on social media along with the program at?
The best place to find information on social media would be Georgetown W Rowing on Instagram. We've got a holiday card challenge going on right now. Go ahead and vote for that holiday card challenge. But definitely that's the best place. It's actually student run. We monitor it as coaches, but our captains really lead that page. So if you're looking to find out a little bit more what the team authentically is like, it's a good place to check it out.
Thank you again, Coach Kendall Mulligan, for your interview, and best luck in your future as the head rowing coach at Georgetown.
Thank you so much as well. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach, for your interview, and best luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.